This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, Citizen-Made Radio.
Welcome to Emergence News. This program is focused on a master of wisdom. His name is Maitreya. The first information in the modern era about the existence of the masters was published back in the late 1800s by Helena Blavatsky. She was the co-founder of the Theosophical Society in the late 1800s. More detailed information was then released by Alice Bailey and Helena Roerich regarding the externalisation of the hierarchy, including their planned return, which we covered on the last program. Their planned return to physical plain work. One of these enlightened individuals is the Master Jesus, and there's a feature article in the new edition of Share International magazine, March 2024. And we're going to take a look at that article today, his past, current and future role on planet Earth. So let's take a look at this article, The Master Jesus. As the Christian festival of Easter approaches, we reflect on his past. The Master Jesus has been incarnate in a Syrian body for about 640 years. He is described in Initiation, Humour and Solar, that's a publication by Alice Bailey, as follows. He is a rather martial figure, a disciplinarian and a man of iron rule and will. He is tall and spare with rather a long thin face, black hair, pale complexion and piercing blue eyes. He is described as a great leader, the general and the wise executive. During most of this time, he lived mainly in Palestine. Since 1984, however, he has lived in Rome. The intention is that he will try to raise the Christian churches out of their state of crystallization and rivalry, and if invited to do so, lead a newly united church. And by so doing, he hopes to resolve the many contradictions and misunderstandings which have arisen during the course of the centuries about his historic role and the teachings which he disseminated as a vehicle for Maitreya. Oh my goodness, there's a lot to discuss there, gentlemen. Welcome, John, and welcome, Peter, to the program.
Thank you.
Hello, Nigel.
Now, I know from my Christian upbringing that I had a lot of questions as a child, John, which were not getting answered appropriately by the church.
Yeah, and I think my family was a little polarising around religion. My father was a religious person, my mother was not. My father had a working class background, my mother was educated, and I was taken to church and then sent off to church on my own. And eventually I got to the point where I started bunking. I found nothing in it, nothing appealed, and I failed my communion process. I think that's the term the Christian church uses. It's almost an initiation, isn't it, into the church? Communion? Yeah. So I missed that. I failed it, and to the great sort of disappointment of my father. So yes, Nigel, for me there was a lot of unanswered questions around that early exposure to Christianity. However, I got from my father, now that I think about it, who was also read Theosophical Society books and was a member of the Masonic Order, I think I got a flavour for the spiritual, maybe for the esoteric. So although I didn't find religion enough to centre me, the Christian religion at the time, I think it got me started. And I love that quote by Maitreya where he says, religion is a ladder. Once you get to the roof, you no longer need it. And I really like that concept of Christianity or religion as a great starting point. And so interested am I in religion that I went on to study religion at university. So I have a great affection for religion, and I see it as the history of humanity trying to explain itself. You know, trying to put it, humanity trying to put itself in perspective of the wonder and glory that is life on this planet. So for me, it's a religion is a wonderful thing to be involved in. But like all things, we must be honest and sincere and detached. And I think one of the faults we see with the practitioners of religion globally is they are not detached. They are attached and therefore become fanatical.
And agendas become exploitive.
Subversed, yeah. And I've been reading recently about the evangelical Christian practices in the United States of America, and literally it's a cash cow. You know, there is a number of people making millions and millions and millions by proclaiming themselves as the voices of God.
Well, we even have gentlemen in this country that
who
play similar
proclaim
roles.
themselves bishops and the voice of God,
Yep.
and are making beautiful livings from it. Thank you very much.
Just going back to the history of Jesus, gentlemen, this article talks about Jesus, his historic role and the teachings which he disseminated as a vehicle for Maitreya. Now, that's the overshadowing process, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely. He was overshadowed the last 3 years particularly, but even before that, from the time he was about 12 years old.
Yeah, so the process started when he was 12, which is why he could discuss those profound theological ideas with the rabbis.
That's right, yes. Maitreya coming through.
Now, when he was in his mid-20s, about 24, 25, the process was almost complete, but Maitreya, the full overshadowing process didn't take place until between the years of 30 and 33. So can you explain how that happens? What's Jesus doing when he's being overshadowed? Is he an observer, John?
It's interesting because we know that Benjamin Creme was overshadowed by Maitreya.
During meditations?
Yeah, by Maitreya and also by his master.
Yes.
So, and he talked a lot about overshadowing as not being control, but with the full agreement of the vehicle, standing aside and allowing the master to use the physical, mental and emotional body as a point of contact on this plane, I guess, as a way to communicate at this level of evolution and this level of matter. So it's not telepathy, it's not channeling as some of the New Age entities
It's a
do.
cooperative.
It's a cooperative endeavour.
Yeah.
It's a mental overshadowing, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
And he's actually said in this article, sometimes Maitreya is working through that body alone, and other times Jesus was working in his body alone, and still other times both Maitreya's consciousness and Jesus' consciousness were working through that body. So Maitreya did the teaching and Jesus was the observer of all that took place through him.
And with the emergence of Maitreya, the Master Jesus is going to be playing a major role in this time ahead, isn't he?
That's right, yes. And he may even talk about the fact that he was involved in overshadowing Muhammad. The Master Jesus was actually the angel Gabriel that Muhammad thought he was dealing with.
Yep.
And of course, when we talk about the hierarchy, and we've talked about the spiritual hierarchy on previous programs, they each have a separate portfolio, if you like. They have a responsibility, but their consciousness is actually one, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's hard to get your head around that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Because when I first started in my spiritual interest, I watched channeled entities. But this is quite different, this mental overshadowing.
Yes, it is, yes.
It's almost as though the other party is present in the room and the master's in the room speaking. It's almost like they're sharing and one stands aside to let the other come through. So for me, it sounds like not only cooperation, as you've pointed out, Nigel, but also that loving giving up, that loving surrender of your vehicle to the use of the master.
What a great way of exercising detachment.
Exercising detachment, but also exercising surrender through love. And it is the most perfect, it seems, relationship between master and disciple. Not only am I welcoming you into my house and my home, but I'm welcoming you into my vehicle as well. It's a submission almost on a very loving and cooperative level.
And the two entities involved are doing that on behalf of us, humanity.
Right. It's done within the plan of the logos of the planet. It's done within the plan. So the support, I've actually thought about this often, and I wonder what your thoughts are, Peter, that if a master is overshadowing you, then that energy must be coming through you. It must leave a lasting change.
That's right, and I think it just about exhausts the people at the end of it, because, I mean, all those messages Maitreya gave through Benjamin Creme, he did mention, I mean, he used his voice, it was Benjamin Creme's voice, but it was altered quite dramatically.
Yeah.
But he used his energy, and I think that there was various comments about, how, it did actually require a lot of attention and focus as well.
And energy from the vehicle being used in this way. Yeah.
Look, and just before we move on, I want to mention this because you're somewhat an expert on this, John. Krishnamurti, he was being groomed to become the world teacher by the leaders of the Theosophical Society. But in 1929, it all changed. He was going to be the overshadowing vehicle for Maitreya.
Yes.
But this plan was abandoned, wasn't it?
Yes. And I think because Maitreya knew that
things had changed.
The task ahead was so great that he had to come as himself. And it's 1945, isn't it, Peter, where he announced that he would come as himself, right? In a created body, created vehicle. You see, the problem with using a human vehicle is you burn them out and they die, you break them. It's hard work and they age and they die, right? And as we've alluded to, it's probably a very big energetic burden for the physical frame. For the energetic frame of the human in incarnation. So Maitreya's decision to come in a created body and remain with us for the full age. So
momentous.
For the 2,500 years.
Yeah.
That is a major change. But for me, it speaks of crisis. Okay, we're planning to use Krishnamurti as the vehicle. We're going to overshadow him. It's all working. He's done the training. Everything's going along. We've got such a major task ahead of us, this is the hierarchy I'm thinking of, that we're changing the plan and the boss is coming in his own body. I can't imagine the meeting that took place in Shambhala when they went, this guy Krishnamurti is pretty cool, he's working well, but we have such a challenge ahead of us that we need to, the boss needs to come as, in his own vehicle.
And Krishnamurti, who was himself a 4-degree initiate, if the task was going to be too great for him, that says a lot about the crisis.
And I tell you what, if you want a feel for the man, he wrote 3 books called notebooks. He basically kept a diary for several years over the period of his life. I don't think they're still in print. You can every now and then pick one up at a second-hand bookstore. If you want a glimpse of the pressure and duress that went on to Krishnamurti as he was being prepared to be the vehicle for Maitreya, those notebooks give you a real insight into the pain and the struggle, and basically they were preparing a vehicle to carry a huge energetic form. I kind of got this impression of a fist of energy being pushed into a vehicle to expand the vehicle to take that energy. And it took a toll on Krishnamurti.
I think you just answered my next question, which was, why did Krishnamurti abandon any organised belief system such as a religion? It was his earlier life experiences, right from a young child all the way through. It became too much.
I think he knew he had to shake off the shackles.
Yes.
I think he knew he had to shake off the shackles.
But he still had a job to do, and he did. Yeah.
That he
became a teacher.
He became a teacher. I think he knew he had to shake off the shackles of the Theosophical Society. I think that he knew that Maitreya had made a decision not to continue to use him as the vehicle. I'm sure, and there's nothing I've read that would make me believe this, but I'm sure there was a conversation held, and then he went on to become a beautiful teacher in his own right. Krishnamurti has been described by the teachers that sit around Maitreya as the perfect disciple of Maitreya. So if you are a fan of Krishnamurti, if you're reading Krishnamurti, you are on the right path.
You've chosen well.
You've chosen well.
This is the Emergence News on Plains FM. For more information, go to shareinternational.org.
You are listening to Emergence News. If you're listening to this podcast or program, or perhaps on Plains FM, welcome to the program. It's nice to have your company. And in the studio with me today, of course, is John and Peter. And Peter, what are you going to be looking at a bit later on?
Well, I'm going to look at this article in the Share International. There have been so many articles there that are really good. It's hard to pick, John, isn't it? But we're looking at the work of Charles Leadbetter and Annie Besant, who were the disciples who were actually training Krishnamurti. And we don't realise, well, I didn't anyway, how amazing they were. They were both second-degree initiates, but we're looking at science, and they were following, trying to work out what an atom looks like. And they did this in this article. This is actually mind-boggling, but they said an illustrative example of the confluence can be found in their book Extrasensory Perception of Quarks in 1995 by Dr. Stephen Phillips, which contains a modern scientific analysis of information published 87 years ago in Occult Chemistry by Leadbetter.
Amazing.
Now, if you think about Ernest Rutherford, he was busy breaking up the atom at that time too.
Yep.
Yeah.
But if you think about Pathfinders and Mythbusters, no wonder people thought they were crazy.
Yeah.
Talking about that stuff.
Occult science.
Yeah.
It was such an exciting time back then, in the early 1900s. There was just so much information coming through down from the hierarchy.
Yep.
Yes, so they were leaders in the Theosophical Society, as we've said before, but they embarked on a collaborative work, producing unrealised at the time books in the esoteric lexicon, for it was published results of their psychic viewing of all the Earth's elements at the level of the atom, a feat that still eludes science to this day. Both had undergone intensive training in magnifying clairvoyance. I never ever heard of that before.
No.
Never heard of it. Anyway, an ancient yogic technique known in Sanskrit as anima, and more currently as myco-PSI, that claims to allow the practitioner to enter into the world of the very small, including the atomic and subatomic. The skill acquired is not a faculty of magnification, but is described as an ability to enter into the mental state of becoming infinitesimally small. Imaginatively, the viewer, through intense concentration and focused effort, achieves smallness commensurate with the object of investigation. Talk about developing your mental abilities. This is absolutely amazing. The observer is not entranced, but totally conscious and able to communicate in minute details what is seen. Mental abilities such as these are called siddhas and have been practiced in the Orient for thousands of years. During 38 years of research, Leadbetter and Besant examined and recorded subatomic properties of 109 elements and isotopes, 29 inorganic and 22 organic compounds,
and investigated the catalytic process for several compounds. Results were published in 3 successive editions, one in 1908, a second in 1919, and an expanded edition issued posthumously in 1950. Included were hundreds of drawings of shapes that were visibly observed, numerical listings of subparticles for each element, and descriptions of energy movements and fields. The researchers claimed that they could view atomic matter on all 7 planes, from the dense physical to the highest etheric plane. We've often talked about this etheric planes. We've got the dense properties, and then we've got liquids, and then we've got gases, and that's pretty much all we know generally. But then these 4 etheric levels over and above those. And so they're looking at these whole 7 planes. This is fantastic stuff. And I'm very excited about this. It's something I've sort of didn't realise had already happened.
Over 100 years ago.
But, you know, we've had the theoretical knowledge.
That's right.
And but anyway, these they're principles of light and colour. A heart-shaped structure is the top etheric vision, if you like, of an atom. And this is written by Edwin Babbitt in The Principles of Light and Colour, a heart-shaped structure encircled by 10 spirali, 3 major and 7 minor, in attempts to further dissociate the ultimate physical atom. It disappeared and they assumed it had vanished into the cosmic astral level. So this is just fantastic stuff.
Well, majors and minors, we're talking about music here.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who's got a vague interest in science should read these articles in the Share International. They're just absolutely fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah, look, that's incredible stuff.
This article was just a primer article for investigating these atoms, and they were able to establish the atomic weights of these atoms. How can you do that? You know, I mean, mind-boggling.
If this subject interests you, check out Charles Leadbeater and Annie Besant. They've both been authors, and they were early theosophists. Okay, John, we're crossing to you in just a moment.
Okay.
Incredible stuff, Peter. Thank you so much. And Peter got that material from the latest edition of Share International magazine, the March issue. Check it out online. All right, John, over to you, sir.
I'm willingly, happily clutching my copy of the Glossary of Esoteric Terms, and I'm going to pick up on the etheric body and etheric planes, Peter, to follow on from what you've just been talking about. Etheric body, the energetic counterpart of the physical body, composed of 7 major centres, the chakras, and a great many minor centres, a network which connects all of the centres and infinitesimally small threads of energy, or nadis, which underlie every part of the nervous system. Blockages in the etheric body can result in physical illness. And we also have etheric planes. 4 planes of matter finer than the gaseous physical, as yet invisible to most people. And I want to run an idea past you both. I've been thinking that on this planet, humanity has the ability to change matter, but not to make it disappear. Right? We can't make matter go away. We can't make it disappear, right?
No,
we don't have that ability.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
So what we do is we burn wood, and it goes into finer and finer states of existence, finer and finer states of matter, until we can't see it. Right? Smoke becomes finer and finer until we can't see it.
We can't see it, but the effect is still there.
Right. So everything we've ever burned, everything we've ever breathed out, everything we've ever done still exists in matter, in its finer form, in finer forms that we can't see. So this planet that we live on is like a teenager's dirty bedroom. right? Everything's still here that we've ever done. So the planet's like a memory of humanity's activity. Yeah? So therefore that means all the damage we've done will take a long, long time to change.
And rebalance.
To rebalance, to clear up. So we're at the start of a very long process. Anyway.
No wonder Maitreya's here for 2,500 years.
Yeah, just a thought that actually we can't make matter disappear. We can only change its state.
Or its condition.
Yeah. Am I right with that, Peter?
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, they talk about the fossil fuels being, the major problem, and they're actually sequestered carbon from centuries ago, from many thousands of years ago, haven't they?
Yeah.
So it still exists.
Yeah.
And it's just changed its form.
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to get on to this article, The Need for Governments to Listen to the People, a compilation from March 2014. Okay. Capitalism in its pure form is at an end in Europe. In future, countries will model their governments on a form of democratic socialism. Gradually, this will become the model for all nations as the most effective way to ensure that the voice and will of the people is properly presented. And that's from 1989, Maitreya. Maitreya's teachings, Nigel, the laws of life, right? Second point, Benjamin Cream has asked, and I'll finish up with this, what would an appropriate socio-economic system be for the coming age? And Benjamin Cream comes back with, to my mind, it would have to reflect the interconnectedness of people with one another and with the planet. A sustainable self-sufficiency would have to replace the present system of overproduction, competition and waste. Therefore, interdependence and cooperation, social justice, freedom and sharing would be the keynotes of a viable, spiritually based system. It would also have to take account of and provide opportunities for man's individual initiative and creative enterprise, but not at the expense of social justice and group good. This system would not be capitalism or communism, but social democracy or democratic socialism with full participation of all peoples in their own government. Housewives, doctors, artists, teachers would play their full part in government of the people, for the people, by the people, something never achieved before in East or West. 1991, Share International magazine, and I would reference as an example of this as the Scandinavian countries, which are practicing a form of social democracy, democratic socialism, however you want to put it, and the American politician Bernie Sanders, who we have discussed many times on this program as a beacon for change and light and hope. So people, there are good news stories out there, there is good news happening, and if you only but search, you will find the answers.
All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.